What on earth is wrong with this town? All the classical architecture in the world can't disguise the fact that in this vital capital, democracy has become a hysterical drama. The puzzle is why the man who lives here, to many the most powerful man in the world, is so often thwarted. The simple answer: Congress. But sometimes it seems that President Obama can't get anything done at all. His legislation on guns, on immigration, on the environment languishes in Congress, and then there's all the recent business. Now, some people would blame his personal style. He's not exactly very touchy-feely. He doesn't reach out in the way those vast egos up in Congress really like. But I think it's something much deeper than that, something about the whole American system at the moment. This is a country where sometimes it seems everyone talks and nobody listens. The leader of a divided government in a divided America knows he's often at the mercy of a new breed of activists from the Conservative Tea Party who hate him and all his works. Both sides are loath to blink in a battle for America. And
I recognize that there are some House members, Republican House members, where I got clobbered in the last election. And you know, they don't get politically rewarded a lot for being seen as negotiating with me. And that makes it harder for divided government to come together.
A lot harder, because in 2010, not only did Republicans win control of this place, the House of Representatives, the victors were a new breed of radicals.
We've got free posters of Sarah Palin and Ronald Reagan.
In a Washington hotel, social conservatives gather for their annual Values Voter Summit. While the name, the Tea Party, is only a few years old, the resentful, righteous right have been a force in America for many years. People who distrust the media and the coastal elite, who believe their country is in mortal peril. The difference now is they've ruthlessly targeted and deselected Republicans they think are too wishy-washy, and instead sent radicals to Washington with the instruction: don't fit in, fight.
We take a look back at the time of the founding of the country and see what the founding fathers intended with the U.S. Constitution, what Madison intended with the Constitution. He intended to create a government of gridlock, where each of the various institutions, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary, would jealously guard their rights. And I think what you're seeing is you're seeing one of the houses, the House, with a good number of people who are more conservative, asserting their rights as American citizens, and they're listening to the people back home.
And what better way to discuss American politics but over a light libation?
You don't have to be too long in this town before someone will tell you it all used to be so different in the old days. Then, sure, the politicians would scream and shout, but they could come somewhere like the Willard Hotel after work, sit down, have a drink, do a deal, the sort of deals that make this town tick. What they don't tell you is why their granddaddies could be so chummy over the Bourbons in the 60s and before. The Democrat quite likely was from the South, anti-civil rights, a social conservative. The Republican might have been quite liberal. The parties were mixed and muddled by our standards. Now it's a much more straight left-right divide. No wonder they don't like each other as much anymore.
In Northern Virginia, you have several districts that are very irregularly shaped.
But something else has made that divide even sharper. In a town of wonks, David Wasserman is a wonks wonk, a man who enjoys playing with maps, maps which show why some Republicans don't give a fig for the middle ground. Just outside his office, the Potomac River, and on the other side, Virginia, a prime example of what they call redistricting and we'd call gerrymandering, fixing electoral boundaries so your party can't lose. Here it's not a scandal, it's the law.
See, in other democracies with single-member districts, redistricting is a fairly non-political function. It's bureaucratic. In America, it's a blood sport. And right across the river in Virginia, you have a situation where Republicans controlled the redistricting process after the 2010 census. The effect is that Democrats were able to carry Virginia for president in 2012, and they were able to carry Virginia's Senate seat in 2012. But Republicans won 8 out of the 11 congressional districts. We're at loggerheads as a country thanks to voters who all participated but elected very different people.
But the very architecture of American government makes this more of a problem. Designed to keep the slave states on board, used for decades to impose white power on the South, It's wrought specifically to stop stuff happening. Republicans in the House aren't just some raucous opposition. They're part of the government with real power. In most democracies, you don't get the fancy titles and the big offices until you compromise. Here you do. Agreement is based on goodwill. It's a commodity in very short supply.
When the country falls into a mood of divisiveness.
Presidential historian Robert Dalek is optimistic. He says we've been here before, but there is a new factor.
It relates to the fact that we have the first African-American president in history. Now, nobody's going to say, you know, I'm a racist or I'm against having a black as president, but I think there is a significant amount of that. The notion that white, small-town America, white America is being pushed aside by African Americans, Hispanics, the huge influx of Hispanics into the country, which may change the political complexion of Texas, for example, which has been a solidly Republican state for the last 20 years.
America is not just changing, it's still becoming, with two very different visions of what it should be. When one party is determined to block the other in a place almost designed to seize up, expect rolling crisis. It's better perhaps than civil war, but not a great example to the world.